Although I'm eager to see Abby's perspective in Season 3 of The Last of Us, the HBO series may be taking a chance by adopting the game's format. HBO renewed Season 3 of The Last of Us before the sequel even premiered. Although the conclusion of The Last of Us Season 2 established Abby as the main character of the show's next chapter, in keeping with how the game unfolded, it is unclear how long viewers will have to wait for the show to return. Significant evidence that The Last of Us will adhere to the sequel game structure can be found in Abby's Day 1 scene at the end of Season 2. Ellie was replaced by Abby as the playable character in The Last of Us Part 2, which focused on Abby's time in Seattle during the same period after Abby ambushed Ellie and her group in the theater hideout. The Last of Us Season 3 is confirmed to be Abby's story, similar to the game's POV shift, so viewers will have the opportunity to see what Devor's character was up to while Ellie and Dina were in Seattle. Abby disappeared after killing Joel in Episode 2 of Season 2 of The Last of Us until she reappeared in the final scene of the finale. Instead of switching back and forth between Abby and Ellie, the show chose to mimic the game's narrative structure, even though we knew that Abby and her group of WLF members had returned to Seattle. Season 3 will primarily center on Abby's role in Seattle during the escalating conflict between the WLF and Seraphites, even though Season 2 introduced Jeffrey Wright's Isaac and disclosed the fates of Nora, Owen, and Mel. Additionally, there are a few scenes from the follow-up game that I am eager to see in real life. More information about the WLF's fight against the Scars will be available thanks to the display of Abby's story. Along with learning more about her group dynamic, we'll also be introduced to new characters like Leviticus. You are undoubtedly already preparing for the Rat King in The Last of Us Season 3, which may be the most outrageously infected version of the show, if you have seen The Last of Us Part 2. It's unfortunate that Isabella Merced became a highlight of The Last of Us Season 2, because Ellie and Dina will probably have much smaller roles next season, even if Season 3 returns to the theater ambush sequence. Changing them out for Abby might not sit well with all viewers, especially those who have criticized the pacing of Season 2, after spending so much time on Ellie's quest for vengeance and developing relationship with Dina. Furthermore, because Abby killed off Joel, a fan favorite, she already has a disadvantage with viewers of The Last of Us. With Abby's story focus, The Last of Us Season 3 introduces another major character change, regardless of whether you completely accepted the shift in the main characters in Season 2. Although Abby is the hero of her story, it is difficult to expect viewers to feel that way right away because the season is centered around Abby rather than revealing her perspective on the plot gradually. The Last of Us ought to have eschewed the game technique and blended Ellie and Abby's tales by alternating between their separate points of view in Seattle. Without concentrating mostly on Devor's character, it's hard to imagine that Season 3 of The Last of Us has any other choices for presenting Abby's perspective on Seattle. Only Abby's location and the remaining details about the WLF's conflict with the Scars need to be filled in, as Season 2 already revealed what transpired with Ellie and her Jackson allies during those 3 days. Although there are valid reasons to keep Ellie and Abby's stories apart, it's hard to defend employing the same format for live action given the length of today's